It's my pleasure to welcome fellow Rotarians to Joey O'Brien, who is a Rotarian in the Canmore Club along with me. He's the president and CEO of Sustain Agro and Sustain Drive. Joey has run a successful business in this area since 2015, focusing in on executing sustainable water, waste, global greenhouse gas and energy solutions. His professional passion is environmental sustainability, mitigation, and education. Sustain Grow is a Canadian company focused on pyrolysis, had to look that one up, to produce carbon neutral diesel, biochar, wood vinegar, and graphene. Joey utilizes over 4 decades of experience in varying fields to seek solutions to enterprises seeking to attain the greenest in class, while also seeking to provide ROI, return on investment. Joey, and if I'm off the alphabet chart, you correct me. His vision statement for his company is, we wish to be able to explain to our grandchildren in 20 years how we had a material effect on the world's climate crisis. As I mentioned, Joey resides here in the Bow Valley with me. He has 5 children and 2 grandchildren. He was one of the first in town to install solar panels in his property or on his property. Sustain Drive is an award-winning business, in North America Innovator of the Year from the Greenhouse Sport Alliance and in alliance with the Banff Marathon, being awarded Canada's first partnership and the 80th in the world with the United Nations in the UNFCCC under their call for sectoral partnerships. These awards indicate that Sustain Drive's projects are not just locally significant, but best in class or best in show. Joey is very active in our Rotary Club here. I'll let him explain a little bit more as he goes on, but mostly recent, he has accepted the role of Chair, Technology and Business Development Committee for the Bow Valley Green Energy CoOp. And when he has free time, I know he does this, he enjoys hiking, he's a ski instructor, first-class power engineer, soccer player, avid reader, and enjoys chess with his children. So ladies and gentlemen, a warm but quiet welcome for fellow Rotarian. Joey, I turn over the screen sharing for you. I will monitor the chat and we'll try to fit in questions as we go along. And if not, try to allow for a little bit of Q&A at the end of the evening. So Joey, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to just try to get this slideshow going. It's always the questionable, eh? Does it work? Does it work? Yes. This is wonderful. Thank you all. Great. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm thrilled to be able to present to fellow Rotarians, especially Alberta ones, which is unique, actually. More often it's further afield. This presentation basically comes in 3 chunks. It's going to come in what is the climate crisis? Number 2 is what's happening systemically worldwide. And then the third part is local initiatives that we're doing that perhaps other clubs could consider. I brought this picture up, the family. That's the real reason why I do what I do. You know, I'm like many of us, we're sort of in career 3.0, which is, you know, your education, you had your working career, and now you have your career, you can choose what you want to do. And I'm lucky enough to be able to focus on climate action. So we've got 3 chapters. We're going to drop through all of those 3, and I'm going to do this. Now I have to warn everybody, this presentation is a little bit like trying to sunbathe in a hailstorm. So you're going to find yourself going da, 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 as the amount of information comes. It's going to come to you later as well in a recording, and take your time with that. But for now, we live by the Rotary 4-way test. So climate action. The reverse of climate disaster, climate change, climate action. Is it the truth? Well, it's scientifically proven, and I'm going to walk you through all the way through to the actual formulatic stuff that we use to calculate the energy balance for the world. But I'm not going to do a deep dive into that. I'm just going to show the formula. If you want to go deeper into that, there's a whole course, a 6-week course that you can take that I can introduce you to that walks you through every bit of the minutiae of the mathematical modeling. Is it fair to all concerned? Well, the poorest people in the world are most affected by climate action, climate change. Climate action affects them positively. Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Well, you bet it will. Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Well, by the time I get through this, I'm going to talk about the world's GDP effects of climate action or not, and you're going to realize it really will be beneficial. I've had some people say Rotary shouldn't be in the world of climate. And it's a challenge because if you go back to the Montreal Protocol where we're dealing with CFCs, that was before Facebook. And so the scientists said, this is a problem. The people said, oh, the scientists said that's a problem. A problem got a solution, and worldwide we banged it out. It's a different world today. You know, we have the University of Facebook. And so Rotary has said very clearly, the president has said that climate change is not political. It's very important. So we bang through this. This is the official statement from SRAG, Environment Sustainability Rotary Action Group. And so there are 10 RAGs, Rotary Action Groups for Environment, created by Rotary International worldwide. And in this region, we belong to the Big West group, which is from the Mexico border to the top of Alaska, all of Canada, basically central North America, all the way to the West Coast. If you look at the areas of focus policy, I've highlighted the things that say climate change, greenhouse gases, to just further strengthen the story of, yes, Rotary is in this game. And this comes from the highest level all the way down to the club level. More snippets of pieces of information where Rotarians are identifying clearly, these are lead Rotarians, that climate change threatened us all. Climate change needs to be a focus. And frankly, an awful lot of the stuff I'm hearing at SRAG these days is climate action is the new polio for Rotary. Now, let's talk about some other partner agencies. So Rotary and the United Nations work hand in hand. The UN has 17 goals that are interconnected. They want to have them done by 2030. And they deal with climate change and environmental degradation, as I've highlighted there. These are the 6 areas, original areas of focus from Rotary, and how it overlaps with the areas of focus in the United Nations. And it's almost a hand-in-glove fit. I want to talk about the IPCC, because not everybody knows about that, and you may sort of go, I've heard some things about the IPCC. The International Panel of Climate Change is a creature of the United Nations. They don't do any primary research. What they do on a periodic basis, continuous, but they release reports every couple of years, is they look at the thousands of research projects that have happened and studies and papers and consolidates it into a document. Now, if you ever want to put yourself to sleep, I've read all of them. If you ever want to put yourself to sleep, try reading them in bed. Put you to sleep in a minute. But the fact remains that it is the top collection of research that exists worldwide. This is the 7th area of focus announcement, which was last June, on June 25th, almost a year. Rotary has declared that climate action is the 7th area of focus. Let's talk about Canada. Let's talk about Alberta. So I've got my little mouse running around here. Here's Alberta, and here's the scale. You'll notice that the rest of Canada is a fair bit redder than Alberta is more brown. Alberta has a greater percentage of people who are unaware or disbelieve that climate action is happening than anywhere else in Canada. Why could that be? It might have something to do with our primary industry, except for this one little spot down here. What's down there? Oh, Lethbridge. And that's where all the investment's happening in solar and wind. Why are people confused? Well, these companies alone, and these aren't the only ones, have spent this much money trying to create confusion. Originally, the statement was climate change isn't real. Well, it's now so accepted that no one's saying climate change isn't real. What they're now doing is the yeah, but, going, yeah, but the solution is too painful. It's too expensive. It's too, cars are too, you use batteries that use things that are not good for the atmosphere. Just a whole series of compendiums. The truth is, the goal is to prevent places, industries, politicians from moving forward on it and creating enough confusion amongst the electorate so they don't know exactly what's going on. But what's interesting is You certainly believe that an engineer has the ability to send a rocket to the moon or build a bridge or make sure my house doesn't fall down on my head. Engineers do this stuff all the time. It's the same math for climate action. And we're going to get to this, for climate change. Dr. Michael Mann is one of my heroes in this. Dr. Michael Mann invented the hockey stick graph. You may have heard of that. He came across it quite by accident when he was doing his research. He won the Nobel Prize, co-won it the same year that Al Gore won it. Let's talk about the science for a little bit. So down here where the cursor is, there's the formula. It's a pretty simple mathematical formula, but here's how it works. You've got the Earth and you've got the atmosphere. You've got 1,360 watts of shortwave through long wave energy that hits the outer atmosphere from the sun. 240 watts makes it to the Earth. Some gets reflected, some gets absorbed, etc. What gets radiated back off the Earth is only long wave. And carbon molecules have this most unique ability to absorb that long wave energy and then radiate it out, producing heat. If you have more carbon molecules, and that's what's going on, you have more absorption. Less of it makes it out through the atmosphere and into space. And that's why things are warming up. Let's talk a little more about that. What if the Earth had no CO2? Right now, the sweet spot worldwide is about 15 degrees C on average. Without greenhouse gases, the Earth would be minus 18. The energy would come in, 240 would bounce out. We would be a frozen ball. If we had too much, we'd be like Venus at 400 degrees C. Bob Sanford is a fellow Canmoreite, Canmoron, as I like to jokingly say. He's the United Nations Water for Life guy. He's the senior guy for that. And if you live here in Canmore, you can occasionally run into him and enjoy a beverage and get him pontificating about stories. But this is the thing that worries him the most, is that he's observing, and this is from the UN, the biodiversity and ecosystems warns that 1 million species may be pushed to extinction. And he's worried about what's called the armed lifeboat. We're seeing it now worldwide already, where you've got millions of people. Right now, I think it's about 85 million people worldwide are refugees. That number can increase exponentially if this happens. And so there's a real focus on trying to make sure we don't cause a huge sixth extinction. I want to talk about the Keking Curve. The Keking Curve is the measurement, the altruistic measurement that we all look at when it comes to how much carbon is in the atmosphere. So the safe ppms is 350. 280 has been where it's been all through thousands of years. We've changed it. So the last year, it went up 5 parts per million to 421.21 last couple of weeks ago, a month ago. It's been measured since 1958, the year I was born. And so we have all this data, which is measured every single day. And if you go on the Keking Curve right now and look, you will see today's data posted right there. What do we have before that that says objective data? Well, what we've got is ice core data going back quite a distance. And I've shortened up this presentation, but what we have as well is fossilized data that we're able to look at. Now, this graph is a little bit squished on the left side. It's not even all the way across. But the thing I want to point out for you is this blue line here. This is basically during the time of humanity, the last 10,000 years. It has been level at 280. It has been total, and that has what has allowed humankind to succeed and to propagate and travel throughout the world and do what we did. This straight line up is what's going on. And so we're up at 421 right now, straight up. Now the representative pathways are if we do a lot of stuff right, or we do less right, or we do less, or we do nothing. If we do nothing, we can hit 2,000 parts per million. That's the entire planet is a hothouse. The planet will survive. The question is whether or not humans will survive. This is the slide that scares me the most, to be honest. We know through our data that we're able to pull from fossils that the last time that the Earth was this warm was 3 million years ago, the mid-Pliocene era. And the shape of the planet and where the Earth's surfaces, water surfaces are pretty similar to today. It was 2 to 3 degrees C warmer. above pre-industrial temperatures, but more than 10 degrees warmer in the Arctic and Antarctic. Here's the part, sea levels were 15 to 25 meters higher. Why is it that we don't have good data about what exactly is going to happen? Because if you go back, I'm going to go backwards here. Never in the recorded data that we can find have we changed the composition of the atmosphere this much in 150 years. 10,000 years, 100,000 years is the normal time period for these changes. And we've made these changes in a really short, oh, I'm going the wrong way, a really short period of time. Solar minimum. I've had some people say to me, but there's a solar minimum that will save us. Unfortunately, it's only 0.1%, and it ended last December. And the effect of the heating in the atmosphere is more than 50 times greater than the effect of the sun in terms of extra energy or less energy. People go, hey, but Canada's only 1.6% of the world's supply, so, you know, we don't matter, so we don't need to do anything. We're the 11th larger emitter of GHGs worldwide. We're 23.8 tons of GHGs per person. Now, we're a northern community, distanced out, cold, and we're the world's fourth largest exporter of oil and gas. The only two countries that have a larger footprint than Canada are the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. Everybody else is quite a bit less than us worldwide. We are amongst the worst. So we could do a lot, and all the technologies exist. Here's some other facts though. You know, we're the second largest producer of hydro, 2/3 coming from renewable sources. The Paris Agreement first said 30%, decreased by 2030. It's been recently updated a week and a half ago when Biden did his climate week. Trudeau came in and announced that we're heading for 40 to 45% decrease. By the way, Canada is the only country in the world, the only G7 country since 2005 that has had a net increase in GHGs. The rest of the G7 have had a decrease. Now, you may have heard of the carbon budget, years to the tipping point, all those sort of things. By 2030, there's a tipping point. Part of the reason why we have the data all over the place is we don't know for sure because we're dumping data into models and running the models because we have no fossilized or air bubble data to look to. So some people think we can get as high as 625 or 693. Some of the research scientists say that somewhere in the 400s, we're going to hit the tipping point. Or some of them say we've already hit the tipping point. The problem with tipping points is you don't know until after, and you get to backcast and you look and you go, oh, there was the tipping point. Normally, we've been going up 3 parts per million. Now, last year, as we all know, there was the pandemic, the shutdown. The total amount of energy consumed was down 7%. And yet, instead of going up 3 parts per million in the atmosphere, we went up 5. We don't know why. Research is happening, but we don't know why for sure. Has a tipping point been hit? We don't know. Vancouver, I just chose this as one of the slides. This is Vancouver. This is 2-degree warming, so we're already 1.16 degrees warmer than pre-industrial norms. This is assuming a 2-degree target, and the sea level is 13 meters higher. Notice Vancouver Airport. Notice Richmond. All of this will be underwater, or we will have the most amazing seawalls imaginable. But this is just one city worldwide. Cities are built almost always on rivers or on the ocean. The ones that are built on the ocean are trying to figure out what to do. So companies are expecting it to cost us $1 trillion in the next 5 years. Just in the States 3 years ago, they had 30 billion in climate disasters. And 2 years ago in the States, they had 60 billion in climate disasters. And last year they had 100 billion in climate disasters. There's an awful lot of money being set aside. Okay, now, what if we do the right thing? So IPCC said that it would cost about 2.5% of the global's GDP until 2035 to completely shift all of our energy systems and our industry systems over to carbon neutrality. But the best estimates on bending the curve suggest that it would have a net global benefit of 3.1 to 7.2 times the size of the world's economy. So if I said to you, I want you to bet on this, but it's going to give you a 3.1 to 7.2 times return on your income, you would go, yeah, it's a pretty good bet. I think I'll do it. This is the positive of the energy system transition. So Biden announced 50 to 52% below 2005 levels, Canada 40 to 45. Here's sort of the amount of greenhouse gas emissions in megatons that's percolating away. You got the years across the bottom, Paris Agreement, the current path, and the path that we need to follow. We're going to go a little bit more detail into this. But first, I've had people say to me, all we have to do is all become vegetarians and all is good, or everybody get an electric car, or. If you take a close look at this, you'll see that really it's the world. It's every industry imaginable. It's iron and steel. Look, where is it? Cement is 3%. You got buildings, residential and commercial, et cetera. It's a all-encompassing problem. Energy is in everything we do, whether it be electrical or fuel energy, or whether it be biomass, or all the other energy sources. And we need to change them if we're going to succeed in these goals. But change does happen. Everybody's got one of these, right? A phone. 16 years ago, if you remember, the phone was like a brick. And that's happened in 16 years. This was 13 years, and this was the turn of the century. And over here, you had one horseless carriage around 1900. And I challenge you to find, by 1913, the one horse carriage that exists. It's actually hidden back here. 13 years, change. Here's an example of some of the change that's coming at us. I took a look at my power bill recently because I'm putting 7 kilowatts of solar on my roof here. And I'm paying 6.4 cents for my energy for this house. Take a look. In the UAE, they did a deal for 1.35 cents per kilowatt hour. They're planning on getting 60% of their electricity from carbon-free sources. Our total blended cost is on average 16.6 cents per kilowatt hour in Alberta. So you got the cost of energy, then the T&D, transportation, distribution costs, then the franchise fees, and generally that adds up to 16 to 17 cents per kilowatt hour in Alberta. These guys are 1.35 cents plus T&D. This is an oil producing nation that's moving its entire internal load over to green energy. Down in the States, I recently read a story that said California is now 95% carbon neutral energy and will be 100% carbon neutral within 4 years. So they did a deal, and this is kind of cool, for just under 2 cents and 1.3 cents for battery. And it was a 25-year PPA. And it's enough power for 20 million people. Well, Canada, we've got 38 million, 39 million people. That's half of Canada's energy. So I called up 8 Minute Solar. I go, guys, I'm part of the Green Energy Co-op up here in Bodunk, Canada. How'd you do it? And they go, 3 reasons. 1, in Canada, you've got a 275% tariff on your solar panels to protect one manufacturer in Ontario. Number 2, cheap Mexican labor. They actually said that to me. And number 3, they said, because our projects are so large that our contractors have their margins cut so tight. Then this popped up 2 weeks ago. Saudi Arabia, second PV, a cent a kilowatt, 1 cent per kilowatt, 1.04 cents per kilowatt. I have to ask the question, if energy is almost free in certain jurisdictions, won't industry go there because energy is almost free? Got to pay attention to them. Murray Edwards, everybody knows Murray Edwards in Alberta, and Bill Gates financed this $500 million project, direct air capture, basically ramsets air through an electrochemical process, produces carbon. And it just pulls it out of the air. If we had 760 of those in Canada today, we would be carbon neutral. Each one of them pulls about 1 million tons of carbon out of the atmosphere. The next big one, though, is not in Surrey, BC. It's in Houston or down somewhere in Texas. That's being built next. Yes, stuff's happening in Alberta. TransAlta, Tesla batteries, and wind. Tesla begins the largest battery in the world in Australia, the very place where they had those huge fires. They're building this, and it's a huge. So it's got enough power to San Francisco for 6 hours and 3 million people, equivalent power. But in Alberta, new corporate energy trackers. So what's happening is we have about 1.3 billion Canadian in new renewable energy investment in Canada. One of the reasons why this is happening in the southern part is we have some of the best solar and wind resources in the world in the southern part of the province. One of the other reasons is, though, that projects are generally 19 months between designing them and producing energy. That's really quick. If you compare it to a power line or a other major oil sands project, those things are almost a decade or more. Well, 19 months provides a security to capital. And what's happening is they're selling PPAs, power purchase agreements, for significant dollars, and it's economically very viable. I've heard a bunch of people say, yeah, but you know, it doesn't really pay. So it's called the Lazard Report, and that is the preeminent authority on what does energy cost. And so you've got PV and you've got PV and you've got wind here. These are the lowest costs. And some of these numbers, the numbers I showed you earlier, actually are better than these numbers. I've had a bunch of people say, but nuclear is the way to go. But look at the cost of nuclear, 129 to 198 per megawatt. The levelized cost. And so this is the preeminent authority on what it costs for energy. The International Energy Agency came out last year and said, solar plus battery is now the cheapest energy in the world ever. Okay, our carbon tax plan came out just before Christmas. I think it was November. We're 40 bucks a ton now. So 50 to 20 in 22 and increasing by $15 annually till it reaches 170 in 2030. So take your carbon tax piece of your energy bill and multiply it by 5 times, 4.5 times, and that's what that number is going to be. But there's all of this money. I looked at the most recent federal budget. There is all of this money for homeowners and businesses and everybody else to shift, to decrease your energy footprint. Same thing with the Clean Fuel Standard. The Clean Fuel Standard was started under Harper almost a decade ago, got moved through, but kind of got stuck for a while. Finally, it's coming through right now, and it's going to make much cleaner fuel for us. When does it start? Well, there's a 75-day comment period right now, and it comes into force at the very end of 2022. People go, yeah, but it doesn't work. Carbon taxes don't work. Well, actually, here's a perfect example of it working. BC has had carbon taxes at the consumer level longer than anybody else in North America. And their GHG, greenhouse gas unit per GDP, has halved in that period of time, while they've led Canada in GDP growth. So let me say that again. They've led Canada in GDP growth with a carbon tax. So somebody tell me it doesn't work because it's worked for BC. And when I do presentations in the States and I introduce this to them, I get the most amazing expressions as people go, oh, because they've been indoctrinated that this doesn't work. BC is the perfect model. One of my favorite companies, this is a bunch of Calgary guys that figured out something. If you go down 4 kilometers, and you know all the directional drillers know how to do this, you go down 4 kilometers and you've got warm. But the problem is the parasitic load, pumping liquid up 4 kilometers, uses all the available energy. What these guys figured out to do was when the liquid comes up, if they extract all of the energy, all of the heat energy possible out of it, it densifies. And if they create a thermal loop, what happens is the colder, more dense fluid pushes down, squishing up the warmer, less dense liquid, and you end up with this loop. And it works. And they built it in the test facility in Rocky Mountain House, Alberta. They're now building them worldwide. The slight downside is until they get the costs of building 50 kilometers of directional drilling down 4 kilometers, till they get that under control, they need $125 per megawatt. we're 30, 40, 50, 60 here in this province. So they can't make money here. The carbon tax helps them. I've explained to them the carbon tax, and that will help them a lot. But their first projects are in high cost energy places. So they're doing a couple in Europe, one in Germany as an example, where the cost of energy is $250 a megawatt. And so they're instantly in the money there. But they want to build them in Alberta. So I'm connected them with some native bands who have extra credits to help with the cost, to decrease the cost. Anyway, these are real winners to keep an eye on it. This is the replacement for coal energy. This is 24/7, 365 energy, and it's throttleable. You can turn it up, you can turn it down. Okay, let's talk about soil carbon sequestration, because this is one of the big things that's coming our way. So a good friend of mine, Kim Cornish, is doing this work. If you go back to when the buffalo roamed, the carbon density in the soil was about 12 to 14%. It's now 1%. So we've extracted all the carbon out of the soil. Think of that as the roots. Photosynthesis puts energy into the soil in the form of carbon and roots. What it takes for it to work is two things. One, occasional stress. Well, in the prairies, we get these dry periods, which is stress. The other thing is ungulates, because when ungulates bite, they tug a little bit. When they tug, they produce stress on the root, and the roots create deeper roots. Photosynthesis. Down here at the bottom, these are the numbers. Canada's 729 megatons. Alberta's 272 megatons of total carbon per year to the atmosphere. Alberta has 50 million acres of agricultural land. If we could get 2.5% from 1 to 2.5 on just 62,000 acres, 30 megatons of sequestration. If we could get 5% on 20 million acres, 1,900 tons of sequestration, more than 2.5 times Canada's. What's happening right now is Kim has, with her research group, drilled 8,000 holes in a whole series of farms in southern Alberta and northern Alberta, 8,000 test holes, a meter deep, and done a detailed analysis on the carbon density and the amount of carbon that's in the soil. These farms are then going to go through a change of practice for 3 to 5 years. Then they're going back to drill the same holes. Hopefully they can identify an A to B difference. And if they can, that's scientifically proving this. The other thing they have, which is really cool, is a computer logarithmic program that I don't even understand, that allows them to do less and less test holes while still scientifically proving it, and allowing farmers to have access to the carbon credits to help them with their revenues.
Joey, we have a question coming in here.
Go for it.
Before we get a bit too far from your slide deck, a question from Dave Panabaker. He says, I'm curious about the cost to run the carbon capture plant. Do you have any information on that now, or something you can provide later?
I don't know the answer, but it sounds like a really good research project. I'll dig it up.
Okay, thanks, Joey.
Excellent question. So net zero policy announcements, a whole series of them were made, but this is as of November. And if you recall, 2 weeks ago, there was a whole bunch of announcements in addition to that. But we're going to dive into this a little bit. So here's where we are. We're 1.1-ish right now. The Paris Agreement's 1.5. The pledges and targets that existed were here. The current policies, though. So there's quite a gap between the pledges and the current policies are not great. The optimistic targets still aren't great. Let's look at this in more detail. So this is temperature. This is 2009 to now. So this is the effect of the world's efforts to try to get their arms around this problem. And so we had anywhere between 4.25 and 2.5 degrees with a mean of 3.5. At 3.5, the oceans are 60 feet higher, maybe even higher than that. Imagine the amount of mass migration that would happen. Now let's look at it. We got the Paris Agreement that causes action. And then this is just announcements made last fall. This is primarily Biden's announcements after he was elected, and then China following right behind it. So we're now at 2.1 degrees in terms of the mathematical modeling of the net zero announcements of various countries. But these are announcements, these are pledges, these aren't actions yet. And so there can be a gap between a pledge and an action. Everybody's hoping that we'll follow through on this, but we'll see. Let's talk about Rotary. So SRAG, Big West group. Canmore right now is one of the few clubs. There's another one, and I can't remember the name of it, excuse me for this, in our district that belong to SRAG. But we're the only ones. It's $30 a year. It's not a lot of money, but it plugs you into the Big West chapter and all the things that we're doing. And an awful lot of people are landing there from different clubs and going, I'm just here to figure out, I'm just here to get information. And those people get ideas. There's a lot of exchanging of ideas, as you can imagine, on the chat box. Afterward communication as projects get brought forward. And it's a good information exchange for clubs to find projects that make sense for them. A couple of examples. So the town of Canmore and town of Banff have pretty extraordinary climate action plans. And so we have groups that try to make sure we hold the feet to the fire for these towns to make sure they follow through on their pledges. I'm going to talk more about this because this is a way for Rotary to make money. Yeah, I got your attention now, didn't I? So let's talk about what this. So we've created a Bow Valley Green Energy Co-op. We're building green energy projects in the Bow Valley, and we consider the Bow Valley to be basically the drainage of the Bow River. We're also moving into utility net, which means we're going to be able to sell power. So we can put solar or whatever, geotransfer. We can sell you power, we can sell you natural gas, we can sell you internet, we can sell you carbon credits. All of these things in one stop. We're going to do this here. We've already created the Green Energy Co-op. We're already on our way in terms of projects. The rest of it is being developed right now, literally this month, next month. We will make money from this. If we can get 1,000 homes of the 14,000 in this valley to sign up, we will probably get between $6,000 and $8,000 a month going into the Bow Valley Green Energy Co-op. And once people sign up, they tend to stay and they just tick away. And it's very effortless because UtilityNet, which is the back of house white provider of all these services, they do all the heavy lifting. So let's spend a little bit more time here. The Green Energy Co-op, you could create one of these in every community. We created one here. We figured out the model. We figured out what size is positive ROI for investors. And it makes sense suddenly because the cost of solar has gone down so much. I put on solar 6 years ago on my house in Canmore, and it cost me 30 grand. I'm doing almost the same size project in this new house for me here in Dead Man's Flats. 16 grand minus a $5,000 federal subsidy, 11.5. So 30 to 11.5 is what's happened to the cost of solar in that period of time. How it works, the Green Energy Co-op is new projects, drives community investment. So instead of the money going away, it stays in your own community. We install stuff, we manage renewable energy, and we split the margin with the host. So churches, community centers, and other things like that, we split the margin. So whatever the margin is, we share. So everybody benefits. Excuse me. Current projects. Now, these are just the ones we've signed deals with. We've only been in existence since January 1st. Like, we're being overwhelmed with people wanting to be part of this. We have another almost $2 million worth of projects that are earlier stage in investing that we're still trying to figure out exactly what it looks like. So again, you can sign up to be a friend. That's all you need is you'll get the newsletter. You can become a member or you can become an investor. And that's how we structure it. We created a group called the Bow Valley Climate Action Group. This is a group of citizens that are experts in the worlds of green energy of different types. And we have primarily buildings and transportation, because those are the two largest GHG footprints in the Bow Valley from the municipality's perspective. And we're trying hard to make sure that the area structure plans and the land use bylaws talk to each other in these various communities. I won't say we've had a lot of success, but it is a goal of ours to try to make this happen. You should know that net zero building standards by 2030, the building code will be there. And while the current standards, anything that gets built to the current standards by 2030, it's going to be the crap inventory. It's going to be not as desirable as the inventory that gets built after 2030, but you can build a net zero now. And what's interesting is take the cost around here. On an $800,000 build, to build a net zero is only 30 grand more. It's almost like a rounding error. But a net zero house doesn't have a furnace. It doesn't have a gas line other than for the stoves and then things. It just has an extremely efficient air exchange and amazing insulation, but no furnace. There's 6 of those in Canmore right now. Some other things, World Environment Day. So with our club, I'm focusing some stuff on June 5th. We're going to try to do sort of an announcement, a celebration. If you go on the SRAG site, you'll see that there's an entire booklet talking about things that you could do for World Environment Day. Here's 11 major categories. If any of them make sense for your club, pick one off, follow it through, see if you can celebrate it on that day. We went through the process of delineating all of the organizations here in the Bow Valley that have an oar in the water in the world of climate action. And here it is. And so the Community Foundation is actually building the plan for an eco-hub. The town of Canmore started a commercial composting program. So our Rotary Club kicked in $3,250 for 30 plus food establishments to get 10 weeks of free pickups to hopefully create new habits. Now, unfortunately, the lockdowns and the pandemics have thrown a stick into it. We're hoping it'll pick up when things open up. We did a Canmore Rotary litter pickup. We've done a walk around the world because we all have an itch to travel and we can't travel. The Canmore Eagles Hockey Club declared themselves to be the greenest hockey club of the world. And the reason why is new sponsors. They wanted more money and I'm helping them try to find new sponsors attached to this particular piece. On Mountain FM, which is a Rogers FM station, we did sustainability talks and they sold it. They have ads attached to it. You could do it on your radio stations. It worked well. And SRAG allows you to carbon offset your vacation, and that pours some of the money into SRAG, which is coming back out in grants starting July 1st. We created a Bow Valley Food Alliance because, like many other places during the pandemic, we realized there's an awful lot of people in this region that are food insecure. So the Food Alliance has been created. They're trying to build an entire plan, but we realized after the pandemic, this food insecurity problem isn't going to go away. Plus, we're trying to reclaim a mountain scar with a food forest. And recognizing that it's Q2 and not wanting to go on, I thought what I would do is finish off there, leave a little time for Q&As.
So Joey, I have one here from Christine Rendell. Christine is saying there is a movement to reduce the traffic flow throughout by using a busing system plus a gondola from Banff to, I think, Tunnel Mountain. Is this connected with the Bow Valley Green Energy Co-op?
No, it's not.
Okay.
So specifically, it's Adam and Jan Waterous and their company Lurcon Capital. And so they have 3 parts to it. Now you got to understand, Adam sold Scotia Waterous to Scotiabank for, I think it was $250 million. Like, he could dig into his jeans and do this all. So he bought Norquay, the ski hill, he bought the train station in Banff. And we've had presentations from him and he has said, we keep waiting for someone else. Yes, the slideshow will be available. They keep waiting for someone else to solve Banff's problem. Banff's had summers where 88 days they've had more than the 24,000 cars that the community can handle. Lineups out onto the highway, cops saying, you can't come in, go away. People going, where do we go? So what he built was a plan. So a separate railway line from the airport to downtown Calgary, stopping in Morley, Canmore, Banff, and maybe Lake Louise, on a rail siding, on a rail track specifically created beside the existing one. And then he's already built at no cost to the municipality. I think it's like 400 parking spots around the trade station that are free to the municipality. And so he has proposed, and Banff's going through with this right now, is resident-only parking, and then creating an entire shuttle system. And then the last bit is, the only animal corridor that exists that's any good through there is called the Cascade Animal Corridor. And that's where the Norquay Road slaloms up through. And if you've driven up there, you're always running into sheep and trying to get them out of the way. I remember with a ski team van once, we had to actually bump a sheep to get him to realize to move enough out of the way so we could get by. They're proposing a gondola and decommissioning the road to allow better animal flow back and forth through there. So that's their plan. We'll see if they succeed, but that's exactly what they're proposing for the town of Banff.
Joe, we have another commentary by Bill Maines. Bill writes, the seminar is seriously behind on the agricultural practices regarding soil carbon. Over the past 40 years, agriculture has shifted to zero-till. Some of the plots at the Lethbridge Research Center have shown an increase of up to 150 millimeters in topsoil depth. Canada has been successful in getting the world to recognize our ability for soil capture and retaining carbon. Any commentary or more homework to do for Bill?
He's actually right, but I'm referring to a different piece of this. And that is for the average farmer to scientifically prove that the carbon density changed in their soil and access the carbon credits that are available. And the modeling is vague right now. And so it's difficult for farmers to get access to the carbon credits. And what this is trying to do is scientifically prove the A to B difference so that farmers can get a greater amount of money for no-till practices that result in greater carbon densification in the soil.
Joey, another one from Dave Panabaker. Dave said, I would like to hear Joey speak about the plastic problem in the oceans. Oceans are a large natural carbon capture mechanism.
You're absolutely
What
right.
would be your observation of plastic islands?
Yeah, well, they exist.
Yeah.
There's more plastic as of this year or next. I forget what it is. There's more plastic in the ocean than there is fish. Like we've done a terrible job. And so everything from the microbeads and the things that you wash your hair, et cetera, it's a little bit like, you know, the Montreal Protocol, where we said, all right, no more CFCs. Let's make this happen. Those sort of world scale initiatives need to happen and need to be driven. And it's not happening at a fast enough pace. And so all of us have the equivalent of a credit card of plastic in our body. Think about that for a moment. That's just terrible. So this is systemic issues. You know, as an individual, it's hard to cause change there. Governments have to drive these at the governmental level, at the world level, driven potentially by Rotary.
I'm still monitoring if people would like to tap something into the Q&A or the chat while we still have Joey for another few minutes here. I did type an answer to one of our members who was asking about Joey's material. Once we tidy it up a little bit and do a few little edits, it will be shared with all of you who registered with us. That's part of the complement of us helping you with your interest and giving you something you can take the time to read in depth. And the goal tonight was to have a couple of exemplars for clubs to take a look at and see what they might like to do. Rotarians are traditionally the kind of people who like to do things. So hopefully Joey's touched on a few of those. One of the other commentators, Dave Wortman, is saying, just want to get it here, Dave, I'm going to pull it up. We have another problem here in Alberta, and that is the potential addition of new coal mines with all the incumbent problems on the eastern slopes. How do Rotarians help deal with these problems? So without getting too political, Joey, you know, very political, offer us an overview.
Well, I actually spent 2 years trying to help the community of Crow's Nest Pass pull themselves out of the difficult box that they're in. And at the same time, Riversdale was moving forward on their mines. This was 2016 and 2017. So I'm very familiar with that region of the province and what they're trying to accomplish. And like a drowning man hanging on to the only life preserver, the only door that's floating from a shipwreck, the Crow's Nest Pass is desperately hoping that Riversdale will succeed because of the economic impact that will occur to that community to help pull it out of the economic ditch that it's been in for so long. When you only have one thing to hang on to, you hang on to it. Everybody understands the risk that's associated with the potential of selenium in the water and what might happen. I know that Riversdale has a plan, and I've seen the plan, where they have a closed loop system using microfilters and other things, where the water that comes off goes through a filter process, goes back up. And if everything goes according to plan, then their system is significantly different than what happens over on the BC side. And with Tech, where it drained out into the streams and caused all that environmental damage. I don't have the knowledge technically to evaluate whether or not Riversdale's plan is in fact viable or not. That's not my core skill set. I know they have a plan. I've talked to Alistair, who's the CEO, about the plan. I understand it. Are there risks associated with it? I don't know. Is it less than the BC side where Tech is? They tell me it is. But is it zero risk? That's an excellent question, and I'm not skilled enough to be able to answer that one.
Mm-hmm. Joey, this is from Christine again, and Christine is a former district governor, is well connected with a lot of Rotary International life now. She writes, OceanX is founded by a Rotaractor who is recognized by RI as one of our 6 innovative young leaders focused solely on cleaning rivers that flow plastic into the oceans. Are you aware of this, we'll say, young leader at this point?
Nope. I'm going to look that up.
Okay, well, Christine has given me, it's oceanx.org. So note to self, we'll share this with you, and maybe you and I'll do a little digging here.
Can I dive in, go back to one item here?
Sure, please do. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so let's talk about the Green Energy Co-op and what I said, there's money opportunities for Rotary clubs. This is concept level, but here's how it goes. The Alberta Energy Regulatory Market allows for almost anybody to become an energy retailer, providing you meet a whole series of criteria. UtilityNet in this province is the white branded back of house bit of it. And there's 23 different companies out there right now that are energy marketers. But UtilityNet does all the work behind the scenes. If you take a look at the one in Olds as an example, it started at the university. They have contributed in 10 years, almost 10 years, almost $1 million back into the community from their net profit that they've earned. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to lubricate the operations of Bow Valley Green Energy Co-op with the same model. Intuitively, though, there is another step in this. There's the energy marketer, and then there's a marketing associate. And between an energy marketer and a marketing associate, there is a revenue split for new clients. So once we get this stabilized, we're going to come back to Rotary clubs throughout the area and say, you can set up the same thing. And there's a significant effort in setting up the same thing. We're going through that. Or at no cost, you could become an energy marketing associate of ours. And then if all of your Rotarians, if all of your friends and family, if greater than that, signed on, then there would be a revenue share. One of the things I've observed about Rotary clubs everywhere is we do an extraordinarily good job of raising money and spending it on a project, and raising more money and spending it on another project. I haven't seen an awful lot of success when it comes to creating legacy funds that kick out returns year after year after year. So you do the heavy lifting early, and then you just let the wheel spin. This is an opportunity for that to happen. And I'm trying to design this with our Green Energy Co-op so that we can come back to the Rotary clubs and say, if you'd like to be a marketing associate of this, and you sign up this many people, it could mean this much money for you every single month.
Different kind of fundraiser, Joey. There are no new questions coming in right now. I'll leave it open for one last round if anybody wants to put something to Joey. If I don't see that, remember, we will share all of this with you. I'll get some background information from Joey, and you should have that in your inbox within 48 hours. And then we do a little bit of work on the recording of tonight's webinar, and eventually within about a week, week and a half, we post that on the district website, YouTube, social media. So our work here is amplified many times over. So I thank all of you for taking the time tonight. Joey, thanking you for all the times we talked about this, getting it ready for tonight. Deeply appreciated. And I know you're passionate about your work, and I know our club is on the cusp of decision making along this format and in this area. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to bring our session to a close tonight. Thank you very much. And Joey, and to you, a good night.